Okay, so week 13, the reading this week is all of chapter 7, and it's all about materials. So we are going to be learning about applying color and textures, importing and editing different materials and swatches, so that we can make our models look more realistic, and you can start to kind of design your own color palette with your tiny house. So hopefully this week is fun. There'll be a lot of me talking in the beginning just to explain all of the things about what you can do with different materials. But hopefully the assignment itself is a little bit more fun and you get to be creative with the different materials and colors that you pick out. So all of chapter 7 we'll go through. And I will apologize up front. I'm going to do a lot of talking today. Okay, so I think I'm just going to go ahead and jump over to SketchUp and just kind of start looking at the different materials, things about materials. A lot of what I'm going to talk about is also kind of referenced in your assignment, so you can definitely look around, see what I've got there. But let's just kind of get into it. So in SketchUp, whenever you apply color and texture, they call it painting. And you use the paint bucket tool to do so. And colors, the textbook kind of defines difference between colors and textures. So colors are just your solid hues, and then textures are going to be a material that has like an actual image associated with it. And the image will be it'll be tiling, so it means that it repeats itself over and over again, and that's kind of how you see that continuous, seamless material. It's just a single image. Just a single image that just tiles or repeats itself all over whatever surface you choose. So your materials panel lives over in your default tray, or at least it should. If you don't see it there, and actually this goes for anything that maybe is missing in your default tray, you can always go up to Window, hover over Default Tray, and then you'll just check the different things that you want to be showing in your default tray. So for today's example, if you don't see your materials over in your default tray, just make sure that you come up here and check on your materials. And so that panel starts to look like this. And so a couple of main things that you're seeing here. You will see the active material, that's going to be the one that's nice and big up here at the top, as well as the name of that active material. And then you can use this drop down here to navigate to different collections of materials. These are all kind of SketchUp's default collections right now, so you can see that there's glass and mirrors, brick cladding, even just solid colors in here that you can look through. Different stone surfaces. So hopefully you're able to easily navigate to whatever material that you want, just based on those categories that are laid out for you. And then one thing you will notice up at the very top, there's one called In Model. And if you click on that, that's just going to show you anything that's currently inside your model. Anything that you have imported, or something that is currently being used in your model will show up here. You can also just hit this Home button right next to the drop down, and that'll take you back to In Model as well. So if we were somewhere else and we just wanted to quickly get to see our In Model materials, just click on that Home button and it'll automatically take you to those. Do be aware that the materials will remain in model. Like for example, you're seeing that there's carpet right now as my very first in-model material here, even though it doesn't look like there's any carpet in my current model. Anything that you paint or import, that material is actually going to stay in your in-model collection, even if you have replaced that material with something else. And we'll see later how we can get rid of those, but just notice that they will stay there unless you explicitly tell SketchUp to get rid of them. Okay, so like I said, the paint bucket tool is the tool that you'll use to apply the materials. So it looks just like a little paint bucket. So you might be able to find it in your icons if you have it here. You can also find it under tools in your menu bar. Or you can also just hit V on your keyboard and that'll pull up the paint bucket tool. So with the paint bucket tool, you can paint just a single face, or you can select multiple faces and paint them all at once. And you can also just replace materials that are already painted. So let's say that I have a couple of surfaces here. So if I activate the paint bucket tool, all I need to do is just click on a surface to paint it, and that material will be applied. You can also select multiple faces, and then you should just be able to click on one of those faces, and all of them will paint all together. And then if you already have a material applied and you decide that you want it to be a different material, you don't have to unpaint it or anything like that. You can just simply click a different material on it with the paint bucket tool, and that will change it. And you just select the different material that you want over here in your materials panel to change what the active material is. The paint bucket tool automatically paints the edges as well, so you can only use the paint bucket tool directly onto a surface, but it will actually paint the edges as well. You won't see that kind of just in your default edge settings, but if you did want to see the material actually being applied to the edges, we can go to our styles panel that's also over here in our default tray. And we can go to the Edit tab, looking at our edge settings. And you can change the color down here. So we've used this little drop down before. We've done it all the same by axis. You can also do it by material. And oh, that should have changed it. Let's see here, what did I do? Well, this worked yesterday. Maybe I lied. Maybe you have to select them all. Alright, I lied. It doesn't automatically paint the edges for you. You have to actually select the edges to make those paint a different color. So now you can see that the edges are no longer black. They're actually more of that green color that I just painted it. So just be aware that you can do that. There are also different ways that you can play with your style settings, or you can soften edges, hide edges to make those black lines go away. But you can paint the edges if you'd like them to all appear the same. And I'm just going to go ahead and change that back to all the same black. And now my edges are appearing black again. You can paint entire groups or components all at once. So let's go ahead and make myself a group here. So if you know that everything in this group, you want it to be one color, you can just click the paint bucket tool on that group, and then every surface of that group will be painted that color that you chose. If any of the surfaces in the group have already been painted, then this method won't overwrite those materials. So let's go ahead and undo that, and then let's say I double click into the editing box here, and maybe I want just this one surface to be the pinkish purple. Then if I go back out of my editing box and I want to paint everything this green color, if I click on that group, it doesn't overwrite that purple one that I already created. So it'll only paint surfaces that don't already have a color applied to them. If you did want this purple to be the green, you would have to double click into the group to open up its editing box and then go ahead and just paint that surface. And also be aware that this applies to any nested groups. So if I had another group over here, I'm going to double click into that to start editing it, and then maybe I create another group over here that's nested into this group, so a group within a group here. And then if I get out of that editing box, so I'm back in kind of my main model space, if I hit the paint bucket tool on that group, it will go ahead and change the nested group as well. If I were to double click into my first group here, so this one is now its individual parts and pieces, but this one over here is still in that nested group, I can go ahead and just paint the nested group without affecting the overall group. So just kind of be aware of any nested groups that you have, nested components the same way. Just be aware that it will paint any other things that are nested inside of it. Okay, and then all these, you have a bunch of default materials here, but let's just say that there is, you're looking for a very specific color, or you're putting together a material board and you're picking out paint swatches, and this specific paint swatch is not one of the default colors in SketchUp. All colors can be value adjusted, so you can make them lighter or darker, you can change them up. What you'll want to do, you don't want to make edits to the original color, it actually won't let you. So if I were to click on one of these materials and I wanted to edit it, I click on the edit tab here, you'll see that everything is grayed out, so SketchUp actually won't let you make modifications to the original material. To be able to do that, you need to either duplicate the material or just create your own new material. And so to do that, if I still have that peach puff color selected, this button up here that looks like a box with a plus sign next to it says Create Material. You click on that, and this will just automatically duplicate all of the properties of whatever material you had selected. So you can see I'm starting with that peach puff color. And then from here you can start to edit it however you'd like. We're just going to look at the color portion for right now. So you can change your picker, you can use the color wheel, or there's RGB if you have those specific numbers that you'd like to plug in. You can start to change it from here. You can give your material a new name. And then you also have an opacity slider if you want that color to be more transparent, kind of like how we have glass. Those are more transparent colors. So you can play around with that as well. And then hit OK when you're happy with your new material. And that new material automatically gets added to your in-model collection here. And from there you can just go ahead and start painting around with it. You can always come back to editing your material. So let's say that you changed your mind, you actually want your new color to be slightly different. If it's the active material here, you can go over to that edit panel and keep on making edits if you'd like to. Along with the color here, you will see next to the picker, there are these two other little buttons over here. This first one says match color of object in model. So if there's an object in your model that you like the color of and you want to just create a new material based off of it, you can select that button and your cursor turns into a little eyedropper tool. And then you can go select anything that's in your model, grab this little cat here, and it'll automatically change your color to whatever color you just selected. The other button here is match color on screen. So the first one was in your model, so you can only choose things that are inside your model workspace. The screen color, again, it'll give you an eyedropper tool, but this one actually lets you click anywhere on your screen. So even up here in your menu bar, it doesn't quite let you go to the taskbar, but if there's anything on your screen at all, you can go ahead and match the same color to it. So let's say I want to grab the pink of this eraser and click on that, and my material will change to that pink color. And kind of building on this, kind of with the same idea of an eyedropper, you can match another surface's material with the eyedropper tool in the materials panel. So if you went back to the select tab over here, there is an eyedropper tool that says sample paint. You can use it just the same way. You can go click on something in your model, and it'll actually just give you that material as the active one. I think even if I had something selected here, if you have the paint bucket tool, you'll see down at the bottom, it always gives you your instructions for your different tools that you're using. So in this case, it says if you choose Alt, that will let you sample another paint as well. And then once you click on that, you can go start painting your surfaces with that different color. With me so far? Okay. So let's go back to our edit tab here. Let's go find a material that actually has a texture image applied to it. So with this brick tumble here, go over to the edit tab. Again, it's grayed out, it's not going to let you. So I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate that so that we can take a look at it. So you'll see down in the texture this time, so we looked at color, now we'll look at texture. You have the option to change the texture image. You can turn the texture image on and off depending on if you want one. You can choose this little file button here. If you have an image saved onto your computer that you want to upload whenever you have a new material, then you can go and navigate to that new image. It could be JPEG or PNG, I believe. And then you can open that material, and that would then be the image that is applied to your material. So let's actually look at creating a new material. I do have one that I can put on here. Just call it new texture. So I'll hit my little file button here, and I have some texture saved. Go ahead and use this one. All right, and now you see that new image came up on your thumbnail here. And actually, I wanted to show you something else. Oh, no, I didn't. And just like with just your solid colors, you can adjust the color of your texture image. Right now, this is kind of a maroon and gold. You could change the color of it. The only thing I would suggest is just hitting this colorize button. So let's actually look at that brick material again, because I know that this one is a good example. So if I just tried to change this brick without colorizing, if I start to change that, you can see all of those different colors. It's just going crazy. Hopefully you can see on the screen. It's a little bit small here. Why don't we actually paint something with it? Alright. That should be big enough for ourselves. Okay. So if I were to go in here and start changing the color of it, you can see all these wonky colors. It's kind of going all over the place. The way we can fix that is by checking this colorize button. That just kind of lets you change the color of the entire image altogether, rather than it trying to pick like individual parts and pieces and colors. So if you're changing the color of a texture image, I would just recommend hitting that colorize button so that everything changes kind of with each other. And then you can also adjust the size of your textures over here in the edit button. So you'll see it gives you the height and width of each individual image. So we talked about how materials are just an image repeated over and over again. So this is giving you the size of just one single image, one tile of that image. And so you can go in here and start to change it. So if I change this 3 foot to maybe 6 feet, you'll see that my image just all of a sudden got quite a bit bigger. And you'll see that even though I only changed the width, the height also changed as well. So it was 1.5, I changed up to 3 feet once I changed the width to 6 feet. So the proportions will stay locked unless you specifically tell it to not keep its proportions. And with that, you would just hit this little lock button here, or this chain. If you click that, you'll see the chain starts to break. And then I can go in here and start to adjust it in different proportions, and it's not going to affect the other one. So I just changed this top one to 10 foot, and the bottom one stayed at 3 feet. Just be careful with that. You know, it locks proportions for a reason, to try and keep your image correct in your proportions, but you might have an example where you don't want the proportions to stay locked. So just unchain that little chain there, and that'll let you do it. And then you can also always come and hit this preset color, and that'll change it back, you know, whatever color modifications you made. If you just hit that reset color, it'll take it back to its original color. Okay, you can also import or copy materials from other models. Should have had another model open here. But just like we did with groups and components, you can just copy and paste between different SketchUp files. You can do the same exact thing with materials. So let's say I wanted to get my new brick material that I just created. If I want that material transferred over to a different file, all you need to do is just copy an object that already has that material applied to it. So I just selected my face here that has my new brick applied to it. Control C for copy, switch over to your new file, Control V. That whole object will come in. But now if I navigate to my in-model materials here, there's my new brick. And even if I were to delete this surface here, my new brick stays in model, because materials just stay in model until you tell them explicitly to get out of model. Kind of along those lines, any material that you duplicate or create stays just in the current model that you're working in. So you could control copy, control paste to a different model, but they're not going to just kind of automatically be added to any of your collections unless you, again, explicitly tell it to. So there are two ways that we can add materials to different collections. The first is that you can add a material to SketchUp's default collections here if you wanted to. So with this new brick material I just made, maybe I wanted to add to the brick cladding and siding collection so that every time I open up SketchUp, my new brick material will automatically be loaded into this collection. We can do that. It's very similar to the way we did things with our collection, or I'm sorry, our components. We created our own collection for components. So we are going to want to open up just a second panel down here. So just like with components, it was this black and white button up here that says to display the secondary selection pane. If I click on that, then a second one will appear down here. It's just basically duplicating here. So in one of these, you navigate to the collection where your material is. So I'm going to keep this top one at my in model because that's where my new material is. And then in this bottom one, I would navigate to the collection that I want to add it to. So in this case, I want to add it to my brick cladding and siding. And then all you need to do is just drag it from the in model and place it in this brick cladding and siding. And that's all you need to do. Now, each time you open up SketchUp, that new material should be automatically in that collection. You can also just create your own entirely new collection. So let's say you found a bunch of images, maybe just somewhere on the internet, or maybe you downloaded them from a manufacturer's website and you want to use them in your SketchUp model. So you save those onto your computer, and then in your materials panel, we will choose the details icon, which looks like a little arrow, and we will open or create a new collection. Again, this is very similar to what we did with components. So I'll open or create a collection, and then you'll just navigate on your computer to where you have all of those images saved. They should be in one folder. So mine are in my downloads right now. And I want this textures folder. So I will select the folder. And then you'll see here that now your little drop down, it does display the name of the folder. So it is my textures folder, but there are no materials in it. And so this is kind of a funny way because the images that are in your textures folder, they're just images at this point. They're not actual SketchUp materials. So we unfortunately need to tell SketchUp that each one of them is its own material rather than just an image. And so you will need to individually import each of those materials. So I'll go to File and Import. And then I will navigate back to that textures folder. And then from here, you will select one of your images. And then you'll notice that it gives you some options down here. You can use the image as just an image, as a texture, or a new matched photo. If you choose image, that will bring in just the one single image, and that's what your material is going to be, is just the one instance of that image. If you choose texture, which texture is what we'll most likely be using for all of your materials, clicking on texture ensures that it'll have that tiling effect, or it'll repeat that texture over and over again to give kind of like that seamless this material. And then new matched photo, we're not really going to get into that. It's a bit more advanced. But in that way, you can kind of align the perspective of an image to your SketchUp model, which is going to be more useful whenever you're rendering. So we're not really going to get into that. That's a little bit above and beyond the SketchUp class. So I would say for our purposes, you should probably be using texture. Let's just go ahead and look at the difference between image and texture, just in case, me explaining it isn't quite getting there. So first, I'm just going to use it as an image. So if we import it, and it'll just ask you to place it somewhere, that's fine. It'll really only be the one single instance of it. Oh, so you can see that didn't even come in as a material at all. Even though I brought it in here, it didn't show up as a material in my model. So it's purely acting as just an image right now. Or if I do the same thing here, file and import, I grab that same image, and this time I choose texture and hit import. This time, if I go to my model, now an actual material has been created. And so now I can go ahead and use the paint bucket tool to paint this material onto different surfaces. When you imported it just as an image, it's not quite letting you do that. So make sure you have texture enabled whenever you are importing your own images. And then you'll see that it only came to our in-model collection here. If I go back to my textures, it's still not there. So I'm just going to drop down that secondary selection panel again. On this bottom one, I'll navigate to my in-model. On the top one, I have my textures collection. And then we just drag and drop to add it to that textures collection. Yeah?
Is there a way to make the graphics look less blurry when painted?
Less blurry?
Yeah.
For that, so I would either try to find a higher quality image or just kind of scale it down a little bit, and then it won't look quite as blurry. If it's blurry, it's probably at a scale that's bigger than it's meant to be. So you can just scale it down, or we just want to find some high quality images for it. I know some of the default SketchUp ones are a little wonky. Okay, now that I've dragged that into my textures collection here, if I go back and look on my computer, you'll see that a new material was actually added to my textures folder on my computer. And so this is the actual material. So now, the next time I go and open up this textures collection, this material should automatically open for you. You won't have to go through the same process of importing the image, creating a material out of it. You should only have to go through that process once. And then if you want to save this textures collection so that it is already there each time you open up SketchUp. Right now, I don't think it would open back up for you the next time you open SketchUp. So to be able to get that there, just hit your details icon and hit add collection to your favorites. You'll find that folder again. And that should make it so that each time you open up SketchUp, it automatically is kind of added to these default collections. You can also if you have a texture or a material that you want to save onto your computer, you can go ahead and drag other materials, even if they're not ones that you yourself created. You can go ahead and drag other materials into your new collection to save them there. Or, if you want to save it to a different place on your computer, what you can do is right-click on a thumbnail here, and you can export the texture image, and then it'll just ask you where you want to save that on your computer. Just be aware that it only exports the image. It's not going to save like the actual material file. It'll just be the image file itself. Okay, so I alluded to this. Let's go ahead and just delete all of these things here. But you see that, let me go ahead and close the secondary panel, go back to InModel. You'll see that all of those textures, all of those materials are still in my InModel collection, even though I removed them from my model space. You can get rid of those for good from your InModel. If you go to the details arrow again, and you can purge unused. So if I click on that, then it gets rid of the ones that are no longer being used. Sometimes there is one that lingers, and I can't quite figure out why there seems to always be one that's lingering. But you do see that my other texture that I created, the one that was that maroon color, that one did get purged. So I'm not quite sure why one of them kind of stays, but that should at least purge most of them for you. And do note that you can only be in your InModel collection to purge. I can't go to my brick cladding and siding and purge. You see, if I click on the details, there's not even the option to purge from here. So you can only purge from what's in your model. So you do need to navigate to that InModel collection for those. And then purging unused will only delete them from your actual model. It won't delete anything from your collections that you have saved on your computer. It won't affect any of those. So even though I purged those, you'll see that my texture that I created is still here inside my folder on my computer. It would only be if you did the details and hit delete all. That will actually delete the texture from your model as well as from inside of your personal collection that you created. So just be careful, be aware. Purging will remove it from the model. Deleting removes it from the model and your collection on your computer. So just be mindful of which option you're choosing. Okay, and then we've also talked about knowing your front face and your back face. So we talked about it's not super important for our purposes here in this class. Recognizing the front face and back face will really only be important if you're exporting to other softwares, because a lot of times other softwares can only recognize the front face rather than the back face. So I think I showed you this before, but let's just go over it again just in case. So if you do have, oops, kind of lagging here now. If you do have some materials painted on to the surface here, and you'll notice I can paint the front face one material, and I can paint the back face a different material. And then if you go ahead and look up at your entity info, and if I select that surface, it does show you what's painted on the front face and the back face. So you can see here on the front, I can even click on it and take a better look at it. It shows you what is on here, and you can even go in here and edit it from there. So it does tell you what's painted on the front face and what's painted on the back face. But we did talk about how it kind of gets difficult to tell which face is which. If you're just looking at the model, it's no longer white and blue, so you might have a difficult time telling which is the front face and which is the back face. So one method that we looked at was if we went to view and face style, you can switch it to monochrome, and that puts everything back in kind of default texture mode. So it shows me what's white is the front face and what is blue is that back face. It didn't get rid of my materials, it didn't remove the materials from that surface. It's just simply displaying the model in a different way so that it is monochrome rather than with your textures. And you can always go back up to view, face style, and put it back to shaded with textures, and that'll show you again. They're still there. We were just looking at it in a different way. So that could be helpful for you. Okay. Still with me? All right, we're almost done, I promise. So we looked at editing your images in terms of their height and width. But there's also quite a bit more that you can do with your textures. Let me get a new example pulled up here. Just make it nice and big so we can all see. And let's just go find ourselves another material that we haven't looked at just yet. Let's look at this one. Okay, so you can further edit your images without just doing the height and the width. So to do that, you can right-click on your surface that has the material applied. You can go down to Texture and click on Position. And you'll see that it gives you these 4 pins, red, blue, yellow, and green. And SketchUp tries to automatically place them at the corners of just one single image. So these are all, this is the single image that is being tiled all across here. You can see all the individual images here. So it's just giving you the extents of one single image here. And so with these different pins, you can move, scale, rotate, or distort your image. And the material itself won't be affected, so it's not going to mess up any of your properties of the material. It's only going to be affecting this one single instance of it, so only the material on this surface. So you can click and drag these different pins. So the red one is the move. So if I click and drag, it'll just start to move that image around on my surface. If you click on the blue one, that does a scale and also a shear. So if I start to drag this one around, you can kind of shear it along that surface. And then they usually do the pins, you can always snap them back into place. The yellow one starts to distort the image. So if I start dragging that one around, you'll see that it's doing all sorts of funky things there. And then the green one lets you rotate. So if I drag that one around, you can rotate the image on this surface. You can also relocate these pins if you want it to be, a different extent. So to actually manipulate the image, we click and drag, but if you just want to relocate the pins, you click once and then you can move it around wherever you like it. Say I want it over here, and then click again to place it. And that just kind of gives you a different starting point for it. And then you also have the option, if you right click and uncheck fixed pins, you'll see they all turn white. And now all of the pins are kind of a free-for-all. They all have the ability to move, rotate, distort, shear, all of that stuff. So the one that was red that could only do move, now I can do whatever with this one. Same with the yellow one that was only distorting. This one can now go all over the place as well. Use that with caution. It is kind of difficult to try and manipulate these in the way that you want when it's kind of just this free-for-all. You can always right-click and recheck fixed pins to get those back. I find it a little bit easier to manipulate whenever they're on the fixed pins, but you can play around with it and see what works best for you. And then also, if you've made a bunch of edits to this image and then you're just like, oh my goodness, this is so bad, you can always redo it. You can either right click and hit undo. Before I show you to reset it, there are also these other options here with your right click. You can flip the image. This actual image will be hard to tell if we're flipping it or rotating it because it's all the same. Let me look at a different one that we'll be able to tell a little bit easier. There we go. So if I right click, go back to texture position, and then within here I right click. You can flip this one, let's do up and down, so you'll see that one flipped. Now the green is more on top. And then you can also rotate it. It gives you options of 90, 180, or 270. So if I rotate it 90 degrees, that'll just rotate the image just that 90 degrees. And you'll see it also rotated our pins for us, which I actually didn't notice that before. But of course, you could also just go in here and rotate whatever you wanted. Those are just some options that you have. And then to get out of kind of this edit mode for your texture, you can either just click away from it anywhere, just like with a component or a group. Whenever you're done editing, you just click away from it. You could also right click and hit done, and that also gets you out of that edit mode. So then now let's go back to that. I've edited here, I've edited the image, but let's say that I change my mind, I don't like those edits. I can right click, go back to texture, and just hit reset position, and that'll put it back to how it originally was before I started making those edits. Okay, last thing we're going to look at, you can also grab materials from the 3D Warehouse. So we've been looking at the 3D Warehouse to bring in components that other people have made. You can also bring in materials that other people have made. So do feel free to search the internet for high quality images. You'll want to find seamless textures. And what that means is that you won't be able to tell where the pattern is repeating if it's seamless. So you'll just want to look for high quality seamless images. You can also, we'll look at going to the 3D Warehouse. So remember, we can go up to Window, open the 3D Warehouse. Why are you already like that for me? Okay. So if you can search for content. You can tell I was searching for carpet. Let's look for something else. If I type in tile and I hit search, you can go over to materials here. So usually our default is models and products. If I go over to materials, that'll give you just different material swatches of a bunch of different tiles that people have created. So if you find one you like, this one's kind of fun. Just like with components, you can hit that download button. And then you'll see that that material is now the active material over in my panel, and it also automatically gave me the paint bucket tool, so I can just go ahead and start clicking and adding that image or that material everywhere. And that should have also gone to my in model collection. Yep, there it is. So I highly encourage you, we'll take a look at the assignment, but do kind of see what's on 3D Warehouse, just because, you know, the SketchUp default materials are nice, they're totally fine for our purposes, but you can find a lot of really nice, high quality materials through the 3D Warehouse, lots of just different fun things that default SketchUp doesn't quite have. So let's go ahead and look at your actual assignment. So again, we're just kind of reviewing some things through here that we talked about. If you need a reminder on anything here. So then your actual assignment is to just start applying materials to your tiny house model. So I have a couple requirements for what I want painted. You'll do your exterior walls, windows, and doors of your tiny house. You'll do your interior walls, the floors of your tiny house, and try to use at least 2 different flooring materials. And I note here that you will need to separate your floor surface into multiple surfaces. Let's just take a look at what I mean by that. So in your tiny house, you have, this is going to represent your floor here. Let's also just go ahead and group it, because I think everyone should have their floor in a group. So to apply multiple different materials to your floor, you'll need to double click into your floor so that you go in edit mode. Because remember, if we just used a material without double clicking into the group, it's going to paint every single surface of that group. So we're going to undo that. So you'll need to double click into your group. And then right now this is all one surface, but if we want it to be 2 separate surfaces so that we can apply 2 separate materials, you'll just draw a line wherever it may be, you know, in your door threshold. And then once you draw that line, it'll separate into 2 surfaces for you. And then you can go in and separate those and create those different materials or apply those separate materials to your floor surface. So do those. You'll do your built-ins that we created last week and try to have a different material for the cabinets versus the countertops versus the hardware. So, you know, try to choose a different material for each of those. And then any other areas that don't quite have a texture yet, go ahead and try and play around with those. And then I do want you to use at least 10 different materials in your model. They could be the default SketchUp materials downloaded from the 3D Warehouse like we just looked at. Or you can find your own material images on the internet and create your own materials based on those. I did link a video here if you get stuck. Here's our guy, our funny guy we like. He has really nice tutorials, so he can probably help you out with some things if you get stuck. Of course, I'll still be here if you have questions, and I'm also going to upload this recording to YouTube.